going to have a conversation about building your team. As we grow and as we scale, we have to make sure that we are surrounding ourselves with the right people. It can make or break your business, and it can make or break you, to be completely honest with you. So, we have our subject matter expert. Her name is Tamika Mason, Building for a Mission, and I'm going to let her do her own intro and bio. I'm really excited to hear about building our team. So, Tamika, this is our group.
Hi, everyone. It is so great to be with you. I always get really energized when I'm around other women entrepreneurs. Let me see if I can share my screen, and then we are going to get started in just a minute. Let's see, here we go.
Can
Fantastic.
see that.
So I built my career on helping other leaders hire smart folks, build great teams, high performing teams, and just really avoid costly mistakes. And so I'm hoping we can have a dialogue around some of the things that I've learned in my career. But first, I'll share just a little bit about my background so you can kind of understand, where I'm from. Uh, One of my first jobs was actually with Wachovia Bank, and I got a chance to hire for, back when people went in the bank and they had tellers and customer service folks. That was one of my first jobs. I'm actually a systems engineering by undergrad, but quickly got into HR when I joined a nonprofit organization doing organization development and operations. We grew from 50 to over 900 in 12 years while I was there. In one season while I was there, I led our talent acquisition team, and we would have over 150 hires that we would make a year. So I really have learned in multiple ways. And of course, with our consulting business now, working in different industries, just different tips and tricks when you're trying to find the right people for your team for the staffing needs that you have. And so you can interrupt me as you go. I cannot see the chat. So someone's going to have to come off of mute and just say, hey, Tamika, I have this question. I
I'll
do
help with
have
that.
questions. Thank you. I do have some questions that I'll ask you all as we get through to the chat. And so let's get going. A couple of things about me personally. I am a girl mom. I have 3 teenage girls. In fact, I am in Austin, Texas right now, even though I live in the DMV, dropping off my oldest at college. It's her first year. I have a fantastic husband and a really mean dog. He's a COVID dog. I don't know why. So that's just a little about me personally, about Building for Mission. We do a number of different services to be strategic partners to businesses and thought partners. If you want to know more about that, we'll share about that later. For today, I am hoping by the end of our conversation, you will feel more confident around hiring smart, avoiding costly mistakes, and really building a reliable team, knowing when, you want to bring in and it's time to bring in that next hire. And so we're going to start off with the warm up just so I can just hear from you and understand a little bit more about what are some of the questions you have, what are some of the things you're grappling with when it comes to hiring. We'll talk about some common hiring challenges just to kind of put some things out there for you to consider and be thinking about. I'll share a few best practices. We'll do some questions and answers along the way, and then I'll make some time at the end for more questions and answers as well. So that's kind of the flow for today. And so, you can take a minute and just think to yourself. You can jot this down. I would love for you to put it in the chat, but want to hear 2 questions. One, tell me, what is your most pressing need right now when it comes to your staff? And it might be because I don't have a staff, whatever it is. And, what question are you grappling with as it relates to hiring, whether it's your first hire, whether it's your second hire, or, not even, whatever it might be. What is the question that you're grappling with? I just want to kind of get a sense of what's on your mind when it comes to hiring.
Yeah, we're getting some feedback. The first one was finding people that want to work. It
Okay.
says people who don't keep calling out sick. And then somebody said, yes, calling out issues. And then how do you hire the right person?
Okay. I think I'm in the right room. I think I'm dealing with the right leaders and the kind of challenges that, are really common, I think, in the industries that you all are in.
I
All right,
have a
let's keep.
really I'm sorry, I want to give this really good one. And this might help too, Tamika. Katie said, I'm also a solo maker and need to hire, but have problems delegating and holding people accountable. Plus, my business typically seasonal, so that's a whole bag.
Yes, it is. Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm hoping that we can share some tips. I also, this is a good time to just share, I am not the only, expert or person with experience in the room. And so some of you have tried things and it hasn't worked. And I hope that you'll bring that to this conversation as we go throughout so that we can just collectively learn best practices from each other as I go along. It'll be pretty easy for you to be able to chime in and put in the chat things that both you've learned and might be beneficial, as well as put questions that you have for me and for your colleagues. All right, let's keep going. You don't have to stop putting your questions in the chat. All right, what are some common things, common challenges that people face when they are about to hire? One is just how you get ready. So knowing when to hire is good and important. Defining the right role that you need for your team, and just how do you pull that job description together to really attract the right person that's going to help take things off your plate, that's going to help you grow your business. Affording to hire and to keep them, and keeping the margins kind of healthy for you are all common things that people are navigating. But then you want to figure out how to make it work. When you've made a hire, you need to hire, you post that job description. How do you really find reliable people that want to work, right? You already said that. Making a good hire, managing turnover in an industry that tends to have high churn. And then also we want to talk about how do you future-proof your team? How do you think about the difference between W-2 and 1099? We'll talk about some quick tips here there. Balancing part-time versus full-time needs is a common challenge too, and affording a hire and while you're keeping the margins. I put that twice, so that must be really important. We want to make a profit, right? We're in business to, serve and let them, eat our food and enjoy what we have, but we're trying to make some money as well. So, do any of these challenges resonate with you all? Yeah, of course. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to speak to all of these, but we'll speak to a number of these. I'll just share some best practices. Feel free as I'm going through this to chime in with examples of things that have worked with for you, or even just questions. So here we go. When do I hire? Well, you know that it is time to hire when you feel like you're starting to turn down opportunities. You're having a lot of catering requests, a lot of events that you just can't do because you can't be in two places at once, or you have a lot of wholesale accounts that you can't fulfill. Or maybe it's just your workload. You're working consistently 12 plus hours a day, or 10 plus hours a day, or just way more than you have the capacity to work. And that's not like a big hump, or a certain season. It's just consistent. You need to find ways to delegate and get some of those responsibilities off your plate. It might be because quality is slipping, because you are trying to hold too much and you realize you really can't give the care and the time like you used to, or even the wait time for customers is increasing. And, obviously, if the customer experience is impacted, that will eventually impact your business. But it's not just these things. It might be there's a cost to opportunity. There could be a business partner, or there could be an idea that you have where you really could expand, but in order to expand, you need some additional thought partnership, you need some additional capacity. So these are all common things that if this is happening, it's time to hire. And again, I don't know if there's questions in the chat or comments that resonate with you, so please feel free to just talk out loud, talk to me in terms of as I go through this.
Yes, Tamika, there are questions, but a lot of times they're answering for each other, so it's
Oh,
really great.
great.
But I will chime in when I think that it's something that's on the thing, okay?
Okay. So a couple more things I want to speak to, best practices in defining the right role. One is you want to start with your biggest pain point. If it's your capacity, if it's, customer service, you really want to start with where am I feeling the most challenge and grief? because that's really where I need some additional capacity to bring on to the team in order for us to scale. The second thing is you really want to tie the role to what matters most. And I put a little money bag there because you want to tie it to the bottom line. Like how is this person going to help you grow? How is this person going to allow you to be able to serve more clients and more customers at the end of the day? So you really want to make that direct link. And, that underline is just the bottom line. It might be just increasing the quality. This person is going to help us give better quality, give a better client experience so that we can then expand. In addition to that, when you're actually thinking about the role that you want to bring on, sometimes it might be a brand new role. You don't have to stick to traditional roles that others in your industry hire. So you want to start with, what are the 3 to 5 core responsibilities this person is going to carry? And make sure that's not something they can just finish in 3 months or 6 months. Like, what are the core responsibilities that are actually longer term? In fact, if you find that most of the core responsibilities are really short-term responsibilities, that'll give you a little bit of a picture when we get to the end of this presentation around W-2 versus 1099, full-time versus contractor type support that you need. But you do want to kind of draft that first, and then build your job description around there. Too many times people just get template job descriptions and they're not attracting who they really need because they're not really honing in and speaking to the core responsibilities. Then you want to think about skills versus trainable. What are the core skills that you actually need coming in the door? What's the background experience, and what can you train when people start with you? Sometimes when your budget is low, you might do better with someone who's early career or middle career, but you can teach them your process. You can teach them some of the core skills. And then be realistic with the hours that people are actually going to be working and what level of flexibility. You don't want any surprises. Oh, I thought I was no. This is this is what it is. One of my clients actually works for a church, and they actually have to put in their job description how many weekends you get off because they want people up front to know, like, hey, the core part of our service is on the weekend, so we really need to make sure people know when you're able to take off. There's a lot more flexibility during the week. So those are just a couple of high level things that I think are critical when you're trying to define the actual job description and make sure you're being clear about that. But I could talk a little bit to best practices in hiring as well. Before I do, let me pause to see if there's anything in particular about this that resonates with you, or if there's any questions y'all have when you've thought about deciding what's the right role that you're looking for.
One of the questions earlier was about 1099 versus I guess a W-2 employee. Um, so I know we're going to get to that better.
Yes, I'm going to actually spend a little bit more time on that. So let's hold that question
Yeah,
for
that's the only one. But feel free to raise your hand if you have something that you want to add.
okay. So let me talk a little bit about just best practices in hiring. When you have a role that you're about to hire, you do want to be clear on the job description. And so I talked about the 2 to 3 responsibilities, but I wanted to just talk a little bit more about this and give some examples. And so, if you're in a cafe, instead of saying I'm hiring a general helper, you might define the role as a morning barista who can handle opening, customer service, and light prep. And so you really want to find a couple of more different descriptors of what you're actually looking for in that hire. You also want to think about character. I'm sure we all know this because people are like, I want to hire people who want to work. I want to hire people who can show up on time. And hiring for character, not that you're not looking for skills, but there are a lot of skills that we can train on the job. And so really thinking through what are the background experiences or skills I need to hire that people must have coming in for this particular role or responsibilities, but really, what's the attitude? What's their reliability? What's their experience when I'm calling their references? trying to get a good sense of what the character is that people are bringing to the role. Thirdly, we want to start small, scale smart. Sometimes it's a big investment for us small businesses to hire someone. And so to hire someone full time with full benefits or whatever benefits we're able to offer is a huge investment. And if it's your first hire or you've had some bad experiences, you can start small with 1099, we can talk a little bit more about what that could look like. Or even part-time to get a feel of people before you turn the role into a permanent or full-time position. So we can talk more about how you can do that. And then also just leverage your network. We have so much technology out here, so many different places where you can post a role, but I still find you find the best candidates when you're leveraging your network. And either email or even on social media, being able to be clear, like, I'm looking for this, me, because the people who know you, the people who know your business, they're more likely to know what types of people in their network would be a good fit for your company. We're hiring for a role right now, and the job market is something else right now because we had 54 people join our business page over the weekend just with hiring a role because of all the reposts people have made. But I did put a little blurb when I reposted our job description and said, hey, a personal share makes a big difference. So if you know someone in your network where this would be a good fit, please share it. And it's been really interesting. It's almost going viral right now. Okay, I'm going to keep going because I trust that you all are going to ask questions when you have them. Let's get to the juicy stuff because I know some people were asking about W-2 versus 1099. There are very specific differences that we're accountable to when it comes to W-2 employees and 1099, but there are a lot of flexibility when you're clear on what you need on how you can structure it until you're ready to make a full-time employee. So I want to start with W-2s. For W-2 employees, it's really you control how they do the work, when they do the work, where they can do the work. And so it's ideal for certain roles such as baristas or line cooks, cashiers, regular staff, where you're responsible for payroll taxes, worker compensation, unemployment. So obviously you need to be prepared to cover those things as an employer. There's more paperwork involved with the team, but you really can build process and cohesion and team loyalty and longevity of your business process when you bring on full-time employees, because they're really trying to learn the full piece of whatever it is that you're trying to train them on, and even the whole business if you're small, because when you're small, people are juggling multiple responsibilities. So for 1099, you really want to be careful because for 1099 workers, they are really independent workers for themselves. They are managing and controlling their own methods. And so the types of roles this is ideal for are folks who are designers, maybe they're event staff, maybe they're managing your social media, but you're not paying payroll taxes for them. They're not reporting to you, sharing with you. They're not you're not their only employer per se. They're managing their own, they may have other clients, they're managing their own workload. That's really important. If you have W-2 and 1099, there should be a clear distinction between what are the benefits and some of the expectations of your W-2 employees versus your 1099 employees. Okay, a little bit more about this. The big key question, if you're trying to think about, I know what I need, but is it a W-2 employee or is it a 1099 employee? Really, a lot has to do with is how much do you want to control how, when, and where the person works? And so this slide gives you a few examples of kind of the things that you can control when it's a W-2 employee, and the things that are typical that a 1099 contractor will control on their own. And the IRS does track this. They look at the kind of the full picture of a person's work experience. And if certain meetings or certain things are required of 1099 contractors that you're trying to bring to your team. All right. I'm going to pause here because I shared a lot of information about W-2 and 1099, and I would love to hear, is this helpful? What feels clarifying? What additional questions do you have? Do you have an example that you want to talk about with the group?
I'm not sure if they have a question, but it makes me think about Tamika. I had an employee and her husband told her that I should hire her as a 1099. And because she was going to be in the office all the time, I was like, absolutely not. And she didn't understand because to you say with the repercussions of doing it wrong is so significant, like daily fines. And so for me, like we couldn't push this far enough to be super clear if that person should be 1099. A lot of times we think we're getting over because we're not going to be having to pay taxes and all that kind of stuff, but it can really, really, really bite you.
Yeah, they are checking.
I
So for the
wanted to
person,
just,
oh,
sorry,
go ahead.
I just
Yes, go
wanted
ahead.
to say quickly because this is something that I found out recently when I started having health insurance. Because we are a group of under 4 employees. I don't know if that's because special rules apply, but there's a provision that is hidden in our plan that actually says that if an independent contractor works 30 hours, they qualify for your health insurance.
Um, yeah, that's really interesting. Did they say they qualify or did they say you're required?
Well, they're gonna treat them as because, and the sad thing is because we're a group under 4, the business is responsible for paying employees 100% of their health insurance. So the cutoff for a regular employee would be 24 hours, but for an independent contractor, then it would be 30 hours. So then there's a point, in other words, they're doing that so people can try to mischaracterize a real employee under the independent contractor.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
was very surprised to see that, but it's hidden in the Florida, I'm in Florida, in the Florida Blue Cross Blue Shield materials. So just kind of heads up to anyone who is planning to get health insurance for their business.
Yeah, that's a thank you so much for sharing that, Julie. You do have to read the fine print around that because it is very specific and particular around even the hours, that's part-time versus full-time and the different benefits that you can offer to part-time versus full-time and usually 1099 there's not benefits. So it's really interesting to hear that was in the clause. I'm not surprised, but it's really interesting to hear that. Any other things that have worked for you when you've hired or made a decision between hiring W-2 or 1099 and you being anybody on the call?
Someone just
Okay.
commented that Bobby Joe just said they've only ever done W-2s.
And Bobby Joe, when you see this, does that align with your needs, the difference between W-2 and 1099 and why you've only hired W-2s is your needs have required W-2?
Yeah, she said yes.
And for the person who had a question earlier about 1099 versus W-2,
Let me see
what
if
was
I can.
your question? And
Oh, she said that she hired 1099 for events.
yeah, yep,
Yeah.
that makes sense. That
Mm.
would qualify fine.
And then Sierra also said she hasn't hired staff at this point, just independent contractors. So she said she's going to be listening a lot, taking notes. So Sierra also hires independent contractors.
Yes. I would say if you hire independent contractors and you are a virtual organization, the things on this slide are the things that you want to be watching out for. If you do meetings as a team, are they required or optional? How many meetings are you requiring your 1099 folks to go to? You want to be mindful of that it's not considered you're directing the full scope of their work. versus, obviously you need to meet, but that's something to be mindful of when you have nothing but 1099 folks on your team. You want to be mindful of, do your 1099 folks have other clients? Are they only working with you? So you probably want to look through this checklist, and if it's looking more like the left-hand column, you might want to make some readjustments. And we can talk about strategies to adjust scope. Our team has a number of 1099 folks as well, as well as, W-2. And, we've really made lists to show the distinction between what benefits, what meetings, what's required, what's not required based on those different statuses. Well, that is all I had. I wanted to leave some time at the end for questions. And of course, I'll hang out a little bit longer in case people have additional questions for each other or questions for me. Anything can go in terms of hiring. But let me just share this other resource before we close. If you are interested in one of our team engagement resources, you can sign up for our newsletter. We're happy to send you a one-pager on team engagement. This is a resource more so for once you start building your team and you have people on your team, some things that you can do to keep people engaged, to kind of support retention, to support a thriving team. It's a guide around that.
Thank you, Tamika. I'm going to go back and scroll to the top and start to read some of the questions. Rebecca said retaining staff when work is unpredictable is one of her issues. Some weeks is crazy busy, 5 to 7 days per employee, others 3 to 4 days per employee. How do we better encourage employees to be on the books? And you can clarify that, Rebecca, if I didn't say that correctly.
Rebecca, can you voice over?
Hi, sure. So I own a couple of food trucks based out of Brooklyn, New York. We're caterers, and I would say one of the bigger issues that we have is that we're very seasonal, specifically with the weather. We are busy pretty much April through October, April through June. April is so-so until the end. Uh, Picks up heavy May to June. Then July after the 4th, we kind of slow down dramatically. We're steady through the end of August, but we have periods depending on vacation where it's slower. Um, and the biggest problem that I've found, and then September, October are crazy, but the biggest problem that I've found is that work is so inconsistent, especially now given the economic recession. Um, I would say that unfortunately, we are an industry in catering where everything is last minute. People, they know they need food, but they don't want to spend until they have to. So most of my staff are full time. They work on average 4 to 5 days a week. When we're really busy during those 4 months, uh, throughout the 8 months, they are usually working between 5 and 7 days. During the slower months, anywhere between 2 and 4 on average. And I do retain staff, but I can't really classify all of them as full time because, like with Deborah, they're kind of working event-based work. And in addition, if I bring someone in one event, like a cashier, where we have one or two bigger events, or a server for a big bar mitzvah or a wedding, a lot of these guys want to be paid off the books because this isn't their real job, it's not their full-time job. And a lot of them have been easy to encourage, but someone like a server, they don't want to be paid on the books because they want to make their rate and they want it to be quick and they don't have to pay taxes on it because they want to work for me 6 to 10 times throughout the year and they don't want to have to pay taxes on it. Um, I've always thought like, hey, a good incentive could be I can give you a higher rate. I have to put you on the books. Unfortunately, it's not an industry laden with cash. Also, in an effort to scale, I can't be paying people off the books. I don't want to run to an ATM. It's not ideal. And also, like, everyone can be honest, we're all moving in the direction of a cashless economy. I don't know if every country throughout the world is doing it, but at least in New York, all of the events now, since 2021, a lot of the major festivals are all going cashless. And
Yeah.
even if people do bring cash, they don't have ATMs anymore like they used to. And even I will say my favorite one, we used to work the Belmont Stakes back when it was in Long Island or Queens area. And ever since they moved it upstate, it hasn't been great, so we're waiting for it to come back. But I remember when everything was going cashless, they were talking about making Belmont cashless, and I started laughing because it's gambling. Like everyone goes there, they bring their cash, and if not, they go right to the ATM. So
Mm.
like I think with gambling, that might be the last of all the industries to go cashless, but it's too easy to just tap. And that's just the direction that everyone's moving in. So I hope I asked and answered things for you.
Yeah, I mean, do you, so it sounds like in your industry, obviously it's seasonal. I would say something that's impacting all of us is the economy, right? You know, we can't control the economy and the ebbs and flows, but your industry with what you do, it's seasonal. You do need full-time folks or folks that work consistently throughout the whole year, but you know, you don't need a full team, you know, during the months where it's low. Um, you know, people who I do think a good strategy for paying people on the books who don't want to pay taxes is to give them a higher bump and a higher rate. I do think that it's good to stick to that value, you know, and as a business. I do think that I'm curious, what has worked with the employees that you've been able to keep on full time?
I would say they really enjoy their jobs and the fact that our work is always changing. Yes, we do have repeat customers, but those repeat customers are sporadic. And in addition to that, they like the travel, they like the independence, they like just the organization of the business, and they like
Yeah.
working around the same team members. Um, Honestly, I would say I think just open communication. They seem
Yeah.
very appreciative of it. And I try and do different like it's not as much as it used to be, but it's sporadic. Like, hey, you're going on a really long trip, treat yourself to lunch. I do employee parties throughout the year. I do want to do something for wellness for the staff in November once the season kind of is slowing down and coming to a finish. I think that the one thing I've noticed over the last few years, since a lot of our team members have been with us for many years, is that a lot of them neglect their own well-being, whether it be just their physical health, their diet. They're ignoring everything that's up here because they're all workaholics. So like when we get into the really busy parts of the season, say we have Comic-Con, which is our year end, it's 4 days straight. Most of them are working at least 12-hour days. I have a few who kind of are more managerial, buckle down with me, and we work 18 to 20-hour days for
Yeah.
4 days in a row. So I think a lot of them really thrive off of that constant busy, but I think a lot of them really just need to realize that they are human, that they do have issues, that they have stuff they need to address head on. So I think this year, definitely moving forward, I want to be able to address wellness, if not once a year, at least twice a year. And it's something that I think they'll be even more appreciative of in the fact that I realize that they need that community, but they also need that resource from
Yeah.
work.
I love to point out three things about what you shared, Rebecca, that I think might be relevant for everyone in the group. The first thing is not the first thing, but there's no magical wand here. You know, it is hard staffing our teams. It is hard doing all of that work. So I just kind of want to put that out there. But three things. One is a lot of our answers are in what we've already experienced, right? And so for the folks who have stuck with you, you know, what are the trends that have really about their lives and about their circumstances that that you see? And so when you said they like to travel, they like the ebbs and flows, like all of those specific things are attributes that characterize the type of profile of person or candidate that are likely to really thrive within your setting. And I know you didn't speak to all of them, you just kind of shared a few of them, but I do think for all of us, when we think about like who has really worked out in this role, whether it's skill set, whether it's background, whether it's life circumstance, that really is something for us to pay attention to and lean into as we're thinking about the next hire for that type of role within our team. So that's thing one. Thing two is I love how you're paying attention to incentives, like free food, you can have this, or man, my team really aren't paying quite as much attention to their wellness. What can I do? Because that does create more value and that does support retention when we're paying attention to just the bigger level dreams, the next steps that our team is looking to make, the overall wellness of them, and providing more and more unique, it could be small things that really just allow them. I know for some of the folks on our team that are 1099, just being a part of a team, because they're independent, because they have multiple clients, there's a certain experience they get by being a part of our team that keeps them sticky with us because they like that aspect of it. And so there's different things that we can offer in terms of value, and it's great that you're paying attention. And then the third thing is we didn't talk as much about the seasonal employees, but I would say the same thing is, for the folks that on the very busy months where you need to staff up and they're probably only going to be with you for that short period of time. Like, what is the profile of the person who it might be a college student or, or a grad student where they have some level of maturity, but then they have capacity in this period of time. I don't know, but what are the trends within the profiles of folks that really can help? They actually are supportive in a short period of time, but you're not carrying their payroll for the whole year. And so that I think there's a lot of insight in understanding those types of things. Anybody else want to speak to what's worked for you that would benefit others on the call, or if you have just a situation you want to workshop with the group?
Yeah, actually, we do have a really great question that I think a lot of us have this question. Deborah asked a great question. How does unemployment work?
It works because we pay it. No.
Yeah, who has to pay
When you
that?
have
Under what circumstances? Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. Well, first I will say there's multiple types of HR, and HR admin is not my super strength. That is not my expertise. I'm more on the staffing, strategy, learning, growth, development, succession planning, that sort of thing. But what I do know about unemployment as a business owner myself is that you have to pay it for all your W-2 employees. And it's automatic once you have it set up. You have to have it set up in every state where you have employees. And it automatically comes out of people's paycheck, so that every payroll organization that you have set up will kind of support that. And then when an employee is fired or let go, they can apply for unemployment with the state and get that. You do need to pay attention to the notices because when an employee or past employee files for unemployment, you will get a notice often from the state to verify. Sometimes they'll only give you a week or 72 hours to kind of turn around a questionnaire around confirming the person's exit. And if you don't answer, like say a person left voluntarily and they wouldn't qualify for unemployment, if they said they were fired and they qualify for unemployment, if you don't complete that paperwork and set the record straight, the state a lot of times will just believe the information they got and they will pay the unemployment. And your rates could go higher, if you have people that are unemployment. So that's generally how it works, is that you pay it annually. It can go up in that state when you have employees on it, when you're a small business.
So Deborah did clarify her question. I asked her to come off of mute, but I don't know if she saw it. So I'm trying to see where it starts. One of the things that she said was, I know a lot of seasonal employers use it continually, year after year, for slow seasons. And then, okay, you're off. Okay, I gotcha. Go ahead.
I will say unemployment is a resource for employees. And so if employers are using it, that's out of my area of expertise. I would say you should talk to your benefits manager, talk a little bit more about that.
She said, okay, thanks.
Layla, do you want to speak more around having performance management in place?
Yeah, just one of the things you were talking about as far as when, I mean, this has happened all the time for me. You have people that come in and purge out. And so for us, we have a very strict performance management in place. So you have professional gamers that they come, they work the minimum amount of hours in your business. And once they hit that threshold, they can qualify for up to 12 weeks that you'll be paying. And to mitigate that, you need to have strong performance management in place. So for us, what that looks like is when you come into our business, at the first 30 days, all those things, we have a handbook. We're managing you to that cadence because what happens is when they go out and put that claim, you have the option to go sit in front of the judge and appeal. And if you do that, you need to have performance management in place that says, this is Tamika. This is how many times she showed up late. Here's the policy she signed off on. Here's where she compares to most of her peers. Here's how many times I wrote her up. You want to have all those things in place so that you can actually save yourself, even though you're paying in the kitty. You don't want to have to pay an additional claim for someone who's gaming the system. The other thing that we do in our business is that we try before we buy. We execute stagiaires in our business. So before you can come in on the production side, you come in and do, if people don't know what a stagiaire is, that's what we do a soft onboarding where you sign claims and paperwork and stuff like that, but just the minimum. We haven't fully onboarded you. We take you through 3 shifts. That's 3 8-hour shifts. We see everything that we want to see. We're gonna know if you can come on time, if you're on the phone, if you're hanging out, and all those things. And if not, we just cash you out. Whatever my team does. I mean, we don't pay you cash, but we give you whatever you made or through that period, and then you're done. We just let you go because we don't want to keep a bad apple into the business that contaminates everything else. So that has been something that's been really successful because you see so much in 24 hours. I mean, you can see a lot about a person in just those 3 shifts.
Yeah. Layla, when you first do those 3 shifts, are they a W-2? Is that like a probationary period that you have
Yes,
set?
so we the way that our paperwork is written up is that it says that they are ongoing a temporary training as a stagiaire. We have
Got
not
it.
even fully onboarded them into our payroll system. So they get they get cut a check immediately at the end of that 24-hour period, or if they make it, and then they are done. Like there's
Yeah.
no we don't owe you anything else. You haven't signed up. I mean, you haven't even, earned any like credits. And then to my understanding, we do issue a 1099. We
Yeah.
do issue a 1099 because for any hours work, we still have to track or something that my HR team does. But that has been really, really successful for us. And then if you make it past that point, then we do have a handbook. You come in, there is a probationary period. There's a 30-day check-in. There's a 6 month, a 30, 60, 90-day. And then once you're into the business, you get an annual review and then you get a post review. And then we also, all of my production staffs, like even my bakers, they're tied to the financial goals in the business. So even as a baker, you can earn a bonus. So
Yeah.
I've learned that I have less employees that I pay more, but they are wedded to the business and the initiatives that's happening in my business. And I've also found out that women who work better because they're moms. So we had all these strict shifts and you couldn't do this. Let them go get their kids, come back when they get the kids. So you got to just do what, that's what works. Like all the women in my business, they say, well, we'll do anything for you. And we're going to bring tamales back after we get the kids and set them up. And so sometimes you just got to see what, like open yourself up to what works for the workforce, because if you don't want to lose good people, because you're like, you can't leave here at 2:30, people got to get their kids. So when we loosened up that flexibility and we went to a split shift, but just the mounds of the morale, the everything just went up. Our attrition went down. I mean, everything is great.
Yeah. 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 And that is a great strategy, is to have those different checkpoints. And there's a way to have that set up the way you described. Layla, there was one person that asks in the chat, are you able to share that stage paperwork or language?
Yeah, I'll get it from my human resources team, and then I'll put it on I'll have Tara and Linda send it back out
Layla is a great sharer, so we know that we'll get it from her.
That's
I mean,
great.
it changes the game
That's
because
great. That's
it
great.
lets you see what you're gonna get. And then and we do have some 1099s, and what we did for them, the contract is really strict around the scope of work. Even though you can pick how you want to do things, there are still certain standards that are required in our industry and certain things that have to be done on site. So there's a lot of things that they have to sign up. And for us, because we want them using our system and our PCI compliance standards, we issue the laptop. So there
Yeah.
are some flexibilities of way how you can mitigate that for your 1099s, because I'm doing it and we got them all hooked into, we use Microsoft Teams and 360. I don't want my paperwork on your cloud or nothing like that. Everything is rolled in. And when we don't want to deal with you anymore, our IT team cut you right there. You can't download nothing. You can't email. You can't do nothing. And that's a better way to control what they're doing in your system. I mean, I've been burned a lot of times, sued a lot of times. I mean, you learn a lot of stuff when you get sued a few times.
That is so helpful. Thank you so much, Layla. Best practice have worked for you. Questions you want to put out to the group, because there's a wealth of knowledge here and wealth of experience.
I just wanted to quickly chime in and say, we probably can all admit that we're not good at everything. I don't like running payroll. And can I say that the best thing I did when I got my first employee is I just got, ADP to do it for me, and I'm happy. And it's not really that expensive. For me, I only pay $85 a week, but they file my quarterlies, they file everything. And I do not mess with the IRS or the state. So for me, it was well worth the money. Initially, I thought it was going to be a lot more, but I just kind of wanted to put that out there because I know myself, paperwork like that is just not my thing. So for anyone who's considering it or kind of overwhelmed with that piece, know that you can outsource that for a de minimis amount a week.
Yeah, I highly recommend that. We have too many things to run our businesses.
I second that.
Another thing I can suggest, we use Gusto. It's an online platform. Our CPA recommended it, and it's been working great for us. It's very easy to work with. So that's another option, both for 1099 and W-2s. Like we do everything through this platform. So Gusto is another, option.
Yeah,
Heard great things about Gusto.
They just had an article about them, about how great they were for an entrepreneur. There was just this big article, I think, on MSN or somewhere.
Yeah, Gusto is great for small businesses. They're pretty innovative in the wraparound services that you need. I heard some great things around Paylocity as well. And then also ADP. So
yeah,
just in case, I mean, obviously do your research, but those are really great places to start.
Gusto's a novel partner, even better. I didn't know that. Thanks, Linda.
And those systems grow with you, right? So once you need to do onboarding and once you need to do, offer, 401k and just other types of expand the benefits, you can actually get into group rates with other small businesses and get better rates with some of these types of companies. So it really can be beneficial.
We only have about 7 more minutes. So if anybody has any questions, comments, concerns, or thoughts that could help the group and or pose any questions to Tamika, this would be the time. Go ahead and come off of mute if you need to. And then Deborah, I did see that you were talking to an employee, so you weren't able, I hope your question got answered. Sierra just said helpful dialogue. Thank you.
Great.
If we were to think about, Tamika, our next best steps when we are moving forward with doing our employee, what would you say the first thing that we should do? Should we be hiring a payroll person after we know that we're going to make the hire? I mean, I'm past the I need to hire part, right? What do you think is the next best step?
After you know that you're going to make a hire, you want to position yourself to find that right person. And so I do think that, some of the things I shared earlier in terms of just like, how do you craft the job description so that you're really attracting that person? and also thinking about where to find that person. There's a number of things I would recommend around that. But even after you get to that, you do want to start thinking about getting ADP or Gusto, like a partner to really support the payroll processing of your full-time hires. And you also want to begin thinking about onboarding them and, onboarding them well to really support retention. And there's a number of different folks out there that can kind of support those different pieces if you need that. But yeah, those are the different steps I would take when you want to make that hire.
I think that was really good, Tamika. And the reason I say that is because it's really important to have systems in place, because they can't read your mind. And one of the mistakes that you make is that you think that they should just know what to do. And you can't expect that from somebody. So then there's a frustration level, right? Somebody put in the comments earlier on that they hire a lot of teenagers and they drive them crazy. Any best practice or ideas or thoughts around hiring the younger staff?
Get your ops person to manage them like I did this summer with the staff. I do think that structure really supports young people who are new to the work environment. They really just don't know. And so being very explicit around what our expectations are, what time you arrive, what time you leave, what you need to wear, what you should or shouldn't be doing. And I also just think having a certain level of patience because they're going to make mistakes, they're going to have questions. And for you and your team, whoever's going to be managing them, to have patience, to have multiple check-ins, frequent check-ins with them so that they're on track with their work, they're clear around what the next step is. Those are, just core things for someone who's early in their career and they don't know how to manage their own work yet, but they're learning how to manage their own work so that you can get the job done and they're able to produce for you.
Yeah,
Yes,
Bobby Joseph.
patience and spending time on training is key.
100%. Well, Tamika, we are so glad that you took time to spend with us. I know your daughter is getting herself situated in college and you are traveling and you took time to talk to us, and we couldn't be more thankful. You shared your contact information, and anything else. I think Layla's going to send us some stuff. Any other questions, comments, concerns, or anything that you guys have, send it on to Linda or myself, and then if we can't answer it, we'll get it over to Tamika. Okay? We
Awesome.
appreciate everyone. We will see you guys next week, okay? Have a great week, everyone. Thank you.